Welcome back. I'm Uday Pratap Singh. You're joining us on NewsX. Our big focus this hour, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has lodged a strong diplomatic protest with the United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio after 3 Indian seafarers were killed in a US naval strike on a commercial vessel in the Strait of Hormuz. Jaishankar said India has conveyed its deep concern, stressing that lethal actions against commercial shipping are not justified and demanded accountability for the loss of Indian lives. The incident has now triggered a wider geopolitical blame game, with US President Donald Trump accusing Iran of being responsible for attacks on Indian-linked shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, calling Tehran's actions unacceptable. Iran, however, has hit back sharply, rejecting the allegations as baseless and claiming that US military operations were responsible for the deaths of the 3 Indian sailors. With Washington and Tehran pointing fingers at each other, New Delhi is focused on a single demand: the safety of Indian mariners and the protection of commercial shipping in one of the world's most critical energy choke points. Joining us live is Ambassador Bhashpati Mukherjee, former diplomat. We also have Commodore Bhushan Diwan, former Navy officer, live with us. Pathikrit Payan, international affairs expert, joins us on the broadcast. Captain Sanjay Karve, former Indian Navy officer, also is live with us on the program. Ambassador Mukherjee, let me begin with you first. We already have summoned and issued a démarche to the chargé d'affaires of the US Embassy in New Delhi. In fact, he's been summoned not once but twice. Now today, the matter has been escalated to the highest level, with the foreign minister conveying our strong disapproval and condemnation, and of course also saying this in no uncertain terms to the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, that this should not go on unchecked. What do you make of the fact that India has raised this now to the highest level and the response that has followed?
Well, Uday, we had to escalate it to a higher level because the responses given clearly by the CDA were not satisfactory, and the ambassador continues to be out of India, in Central Asia, Kazakhstan and other places. So we had no option but to escalate it, and I think which will have to be escalated even further, all the way up to the White House, because the response from Rubio is not satisfactory. And the response from Rubio, tries to shift the blame to Iran, which Iran has denied. And on the other hand, the response is that any ship which will go against the blockade will be a legitimate target. That is not acceptable by international law. That is not a friendly statement from a friendly strategic partner. And it fails to take into account the grave consequences of armed ships firing upon innocent civilian tankers, etc. And a blockade in international law is part of an act of war. But Trump has never said it's a war, because for that he needs approval by the US Congress. He's always called it a conflict. If it is a conflict, then the blockade which US has imposed, both here and I'm told in Cuba for a long time now, these are acts of war which have not been approved under the American Constitution by the US Congress. So I think, judging from the unsatisfactory response that we have received, we will have to escalate it further. We have 2 options. We will take it first to the Vice President, and then we will take it all the way up to the big man himself. There's no other option, because here in India, public opinion is outraged. 3 innocent seamen have lost their lives, and there could be much more to follow. We have many ships over there which are not flying the Indian flag, but which are full of Indian crew. And moreover, as I was told yesterday, there's been a case of 1 Indian flagged ship which was fired upon by Iran. Otherwise, the Americans have not fired yet upon any ship carrying the Indian flag. But that is not very consequential, because there are so many ships there with different, they carry the flag of the place where they've been registered, for instance, Palau, etc., that they are full of Indian crew. So if more Indians get killed in this horrific manner, there will be outrage all over India. There is already outrage. And does Rubio not understand how much damage he is doing to the Indo-US strategic partnership at a time when India is supposed to be hosting the Quad.
Yes.
India is maintaining rule of law along with the Quad in Indo-Pacific.
Yes.
So rule of law doesn't apply in other parts of the ocean.
Absolutely.
It's a question I would ask.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commodore Devan, do you believe this escalation was necessary? Looking at the way the outrage had been building in India and looking at, of course, also the response so far from the US, do you believe this escalation was necessary to the US Secretary of State by the External Affairs Minister of India?
Uday, Ambassador, I totally agree with the Ambassador's view, and I strongly submit that this should be, level should be raised and the protest should be lodged more strongly up to the White House. I want to tell you that there are about 19 lakhs sailors, mariners all over the world carrying out the shipping, merchant shipping. And in this, about 45% are officers and 55% ratings. That's a minor detail. And what has happened now? Out of this, topmost supplier of mariners is Philippines, about 15%. And China is the next one, 12%. India is about 10%, which means 3 lakh mariners of ours are sailing, manning the ships. And 90% of the ships, 90% of mariners, 90% of mariners globally are sailing on foreign flag ships. Just because it's a Palau-based, Liberian flag, or whatever, doesn't matter. Rule of this UNCLOS and rules on seas is very clear. Nobody can kill innocent sailors who are on the carrying of the trade. Now, what has happened in this? 3 people who have died, God save them, God bless their souls. One is a chief engineer, very senior officer. Another is a deck cadet. Another is a fitter in the engine room. Now, the point is, take a classical case of Mercer Street, where there was a Liberian flag tanker and a British citizen died. It was severely pushed forward against the charges are pressed against the defaulting country, and it became a very major issue. And what India can do is ask for a transparent investigation. A, B, ask for compensation, and C, very important, the top 3 countries, that Philippines, China, and next is India, and even Indonesia next to that, even Russia. These countries need to get together and push hard on the fact that killing of the civilian mariners is not justified by any country. And most of the, as I told you, 90% of the sailors, whether from US, France, UK, developed countries, are very much exposed to similar risk. And they can press very hard against the during Iraq tankers war, Iraq war, during the Falklands war. We need to go very strongly on this.
Yes.
So to show that and send an opinion across the world that this is not going to fly, this is not going to be taken lying down.
Okay. Pathakrit Pine, do you believe this escalation was inevitable? And now what do you make of what has transpired following this escalation, with the blame game now erupting between the US and Iran over who is responsible for the death of these 3 Indians?
Well, if the External Affairs Minister has met Marco Rubio, that means India has valid information with itself that the concerned ship has been attacked by the Americans themselves and not somebody else. It's not to give any clean sheet to the Iranians. They are equally responsible for the mess that is there in Middle East. But the fact is, there are 2 things. I completely respect all the comments that have been made by the previous respected commentators here, panelists here. It's a very complex issue. There's no denial of the fact that there will be tremendous severe backlash back home if the seafarers are at the harm's way. And at the same time, there are, as has been rightly mentioned, hundreds of thousands of Indians are sailing. The question is, how much can India keep an eye on every ship where Indians are involved or legally employed? The bigger issue is this, that this is not going to change at all. It is like the might is right, and that is what the Americans are doing. If you want to escalate it and take it to the White House, I mean, what would White House do? White House will just, give certain statements and pass on the buck to the Iranians, and tomorrow, from the White House itself, the instructions will be given again. The next ship can be targeted as it was done yesterday. That is what we are dealing with. So I think there are 2 ways. Either, as again rightly mentioned, some of the countries of global south must come together, form a bloc. And this predicament that you see today is primarily because we have a third grade organization called United Nations. UNCLOS is there, but United Nations has no role to play in anything. I mean, do you expect the Secretary General to come up and send out a demarche to the American president? He will not do. His job will go away. The reality is this, that for a country like India, for many of the countries of global south, or even BRICS, it's important to come out and say that whenever our ships, not necessarily ships where all the Indians are employed, that cannot be done. But somewhere, you need to have a block with which warships should travel. And if there are any ship attacked, there has to be a message out that there will be response. It's not easy to go out and fight a war with the United States right now. But I think that what is happening right now eventually will push countries towards something else. You see the kind of efforts being made in India to find out alternates for fuel, to reduce the impact, the exposure to Middle East. Some or the other way, you need to send out a strong message, not in terms of that, I'm warning you, don't do it again, but they have to be hurt economically somewhere. The whole mess that you see in Middle East is primarily to ensure one thing, that United States becomes one of the biggest seller of oil. That is it. And they are trying to cut down on any country which is selling oil in non-dollar denomination. So it is a problem that is not going to go away tomorrow because we have escalated the matter. The question is, how do we deal with it henceforth? There is no guarantee it would not happen tomorrow again. The Americans are trying to draw a red line. If you cross the red line, this is what will happen to you. Either we go all out and say that our warships will be present there. If something bad happens, there will be reciprocation, some or the other way, preferably by a bloc. But or else you completely do away with your exposure to Middle East. Easier said than done, but something has to be done. This problem that the Americans have started, even the Americans don't know when they will end it or whether they can end it entirely. All these ceasefire bluff that we are hearing for the last few months, these are all temporary things. The flare-up will keep on continuing because the Americans have not been able to deliver or accomplish the outcome for which they went to the war. So they will try to pound on anybody or everybody. In such a scenario, what India should do, I think India, if possible, Prime Minister Modi, my personal opinion, should raise it in the G7 meeting itself. This is a very serious issue, and that all countries must come together.
Captain Sanjay Karve, do you believe this step was inevitable? The raising of this now at the levels of the foreign ministers. What follow-up steps now need to be taken to this as well? Do you believe it should be raised at the highest levels if Donald Trump does meet with Narendra Modi on the sidelines of the G7 summit in France, as we're expecting him to? Do you believe it should be spoken of there too, Captain Karve?
I agree with the previous speakers when they said innocent seafarers cannot become collateral damage. When two nations are fighting a war at sea, the standard convention is innocent seafarers are kept out of the arms way. Whereas in this particular case, the Indian sailors have become collateral damage. And India has rightfully raised this issue. And I think one of the primary reasons why India has raised it, because of a political backlash from the citizens of India. Just throw back your mind to a couple of months ago when the Iranian ship Dana was sunk off the Sri Lankan coast. India officially has no comments, and I remember correctly, the foreign minister then had remarked that, well, the ship had left Indian territorial waters and we have no jurisdiction, and it just happened to be on the wrong side of events. This was the exact statement given by our External Affairs Ministry. Probably because no Indian was involved, probably legally he was right, the ship was not in Indian territorial waters. Now, when there is an official blockade announced by the Iranian Navy and the US has made it very clear they will not allow any ship to cross the Strait of Hormuz. Iran had also made it very clear that they will not allow any ship to cross the Strait of Hormuz. It does not matter which country the ship belongs to. This particular ship flew the flag of Palau, is owned by a company in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. I really find no reason why the US or the Iranian Navy should know who the crew of that ship is. Please look at it very dispassionate. Two nations, apparently at war, have drawn a line and said that any vessel crosses this line will be fired upon or will be stopped. Yes, I agree. Lives should not have been lost. But this is also the other side of the story. Today we are raking up the issue because they were Indian citizens. I am left wondering, would India have raked up this issue if it was an Indian ship with foreign nationals manning it? I have my own doubts, especially looking at the statement which our honorable foreign minister had made when the Iranian ship, a training ship, was sunk. We had no comments to offer. And we took the legal route saying it is not in Indian territorial waters. So if we take the same legal route today, this ship was transiting through a no transit zone officially declared by both nations. It had no business to be transiting through that zone. Then what jurisdiction does India have to make a comment on that? Everyone knows there is a war. Let us not get into the right or wrong of the war, whether the ship should be allowed to transit or not allowed to transit. It is on record. Both these nations have said no shipping will be permitted. Yet there is a ship which is trying to sail out. Wouldn't the ship or the ship's manager be aware of the consequences? It is very unfortunate that 3 Indian citizens have died, and my sympathies to the families. This should not have happened. But what I said also needs to be taken into account, and you have to look at everything very dispassionately.
Now, Ambassador Bashmati Mukherjee, also the fact is that the situation continues to remain very volatile as well, which is why these escalations are necessary. There have been 3 incidents of firing on and attacks on Indian vessels. Thankfully, in the other 2, there have been no loss of lives, but anything could have happened. And also, further attacks on other vessels continue as we speak, including one earlier today as well.
But this has been discussed in other channels also. The point which has been raised by Captain Sanjay Kalde, which is that should the captain of that ship, knowing the danger, have gone in? But on the other hand, there are standard operating procedures, which my colleagues in the Indian Navy present here would know better than me, which is that if a ship, a civilian ship, an unarmed ship, is entering a conflict zone, they have to be given a warning. There is a procedure to do it. You don't straight away start shooting people dead or throw missiles in the engine room. Fortunately, it was not loaded. So in my perception, India is now faced with a situation where we need to escalate it at the highest level. We certainly need to take it up with at the G7. At the same time, we need to make a hard decision that ships with Indian flags are already, if I understand the facts correctly, are already being given full escort by the Indian Navy. Now the question arises, what happens to the other ships which have large Indian crew but which are flying on other flags? There we have to take a considered decision that are we accepting this illegal blockade, in which case we have to inform the Indian sailors' crews that it would not be possible for us to follow up each and every one. I don't think that's a good suggestion. I don't think that's going to go down well with the Indian public. We have to take a very strong view on this matter. And as far as the Iranian ship, which was sunk the moment it left Indian territorial waters, what has not been mentioned here is that India had offered to that ship that they should stay for some more time in Indian waters under Indian hospitality. They chose themselves to move out.
Yes.
And we certainly gave them.
Okay.
The Sri Lankan Navy rescued them.
Absolutely. Just stay with us. Just stay with us for a second. We are learning of some more breaking news coming in this hour. Secretary of State of the United States, Marco Rubio, has spoken with S. Jaishankar. Now, Rubio's response is coming to the fore. According to the US statement and readout on this phone call, Rubio stressed that all commercial vessels should immediately comply with orders from US forces and they seek to uphold peace in the Strait. Rubio has stressed violations of the blockade and the illicit transport of Iranian oil will not be tolerated. So big news coming in. Marco Rubio has asked the External Affairs Minister, in fact, to cooperate with the blockade. He has said commercial ships need to comply with US instructions in the region. This is, of course, a big statement coming in from the US on this phone call. Your first reaction, Patikrit Pai?
So that's what I was saying. First and foremost, it would be difficult for India to keep an eye on all the seafarers wherever they are traveling or in whatever ships. And I think on many occasions, the ships are themselves under pressure by their own the companies that, you have to travel through that contested space. Marco Rubio has just escalated. That was I was saying previously, that complaining with White House will not even help, because they are all in the same line, and they are into a tug of war from which they will not come out. They know the kind of indispensability of oil that is there, and they are trying to choke off the entire supply of oil that Iran has, which primarily goes to China. So I think we need to find out alternatives. This cat and mouse game in the whole of Middle East is not going to go down, not going to go away so soon. I agree with whatever Ambassador Mukherjee also mentioned, that we need to send out a strong message, even if it's unpopular, to all the seafarers of India, that look, this is a war going on. It's not a simple thing happening. And on the Iranian ship, I want to make one comment. I respect the statement by the captain, sir, that at the end of the day, there has to be a difference between a civilian tanker and a warship. The warship was going to go back to Iran. That is a different thing when it comes to.
Right.
I'm not trying to challenge the legalities, but I'm saying targeting a civilian ship is the most.
Comrade Diwan also coming. Comrade Diwan.
yeah,
Comrade
yeah,
Diwan.
yeah.
The US readout has just come in. We are now learning of what Marco Rubio's response was to S. Jaishankar. What do you make of what he said?
Uday, let me put the facts straight. The ship's operator, iOS Marine, says that it was not, affected ship was not carrying Iranian oil. It was not, and this incident was in Gulf of Oman. It was outside Hormuz, and also iOS Marine says the firing was not done by any Iranian agency. And I want to tell you this ILO, which is responsible for labor employment and employment issues globally, is also needs to be seized of this problem. A strong protest needs to be lodged with ILO as well as IMO, International Marine Organization. And I must tell you that today there are forecasts that in 1 year or 5 years' time, there'll be a shortage of 120 mariners. And if you have these kind of things happening, how many people will join this career? And it will be impacting global trade. I think this issue needs to be taken up seriously, though it may look like a small thing, and there need to be a resolution in the UNO. Let anybody veto it. I'm sure Russia and China will not veto it in any case, because Chinese mariners are number 2 highest, and Russians are number 5th highest, and we are there, of course. So even UK would not do it, because they have suffered earlier when, in case of Mercer and other, their UK sailors have been hit, and even French sailors have been hit. So I think need is to move a resolution in the Security Council to take it forward.
Okay.
And what you're saying is, Marco Rubio has said it. This is a routine statement that means nothing much really. He says he's just re-emphasizing that better watch out. We will do the way we have been doing.
It's a pretty matter of fact statement, just reiterating what the US has been saying on this blockade all along, Ambassador Mukherjee, and offers no relief or no accountability at all.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'm sorry to inform my co-panelists that the Security Council is totally paralyzed because the superpowers are split on this matter. So even if we try to move a resolution, it's immediately vetoed by US and its allies.
Never
But
mind.
I actually firmly believe that the Indian government should not take the route of informing innocent Indian sailors sailing in ships without the Indian flag to just stay put. What we need to do is to give a very strong signal to the US administration that just as they have red lines, they have crossed a very important Indian red line, because we are a democracy. I'm told that these Chinese sailors, this is what I understand from my colleagues who know more than me, they sail mainly on Chinese ships with a Chinese flag, and that's why they have not come under attack. Whereas Indian sailors are sailing in all kinds of ships with different flags. So this is something we need to work out. But we really cannot afford, given the outrage of the Indian public, to send a message saying that we cannot be directly responsible for all these Indian sailors. We are responsible as a nation and as a government for the lives of our precious Indians, and we cannot abandon it just because Trump is a bully. If he is a bully, we have to stand up to him, and we have to tell him that we are not going to accept it. India did not accept American bullying when it was much weaker in 71. Is India going to accept American bullying in 2026? In my opinion, certainly not. Uday.
Captain Karve, I'll leave the last word to you on, of course, the way forward now. And you can, of course, respond to the others who were referring to your statements earlier.
I think whatever happened is really very sad. And to be very honest, there is no practical solution to what is happening. You really cannot stop a seafarer who is looking for employment for joining a foreign shipping company or flying or sailing under a foreign flag. It is an ideal situation which should happen, but in practically, it really cannot happen. What the Indian government can do is issue a warning through DG Shipping and through IMO also, International Maritime Organization, can issue a warning saying this is a disputed zone, please avoid sailing or please avoid crossing the strait. Let us not get into whether the warnings issued by Iran or US are right or wrong. The fact is, they have openly declared that this is a hostile zone. Any ship which crosses is liable to be stopped. And they have made it amply clear, which Mr. Rubio today has reiterated, that this is our stand. So what India can do as an interim measure, pass a message across, look, this is a problem time, a problem area. Your safety is, yes, our responsibility, but unless and until you are flying an Indian flag, legally the Indian Navy cannot step in to escort you in and out of the Strait of Hormuz. It is only if you are flying an Indian flag, the Indian Navy can step in a hostile zone. In a non-hostile zone, yes, the Indian Navy has been escorting the ships. So the Indian seafarers have to take a call and say, look, I am not going to sail through this straits till the situation normalizes or improvises.
Okay. My thanks to our guests for joining us on this discussion. We've run totally out of time. Let's slip into a short break.